future. So here we are with that recording. We are here today to learn from Eric Charlton and Lori Hepner. They are our two artists as part of our exhibition we have right now at Altoona. We have a three-part exhibition that we're really excited to share with you today, and we'll have a little bit of information for you now on that. All right, so we're zooming that share for you. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Great, okay. So we have this exhibition. We're doing this lecture series to expand upon a lot of what we've been learning from our artists and different ways to see photography as a medium. Today we're going to be seeing how technology is used in Eric and Lori's work through and really its artistic legacy. And just a reminder that our museum is free to the public. Your financial support keeps us open for that. So please consider donating to Southern Allegheny's Museum of Art if you're able. It really helps us bring programs to the community. This exhibition is on view at SAMA Altoona starting tomorrow, so come on down. We are at 1210 11th Avenue in Altoona, and we would like to thank our exhibition sponsors, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Struber and Rocket Fuel Studios. The first exhibition out of our three is Pictorialism, which is on view in the Wolf Gallery. In this exhibition, we get to look at several different turn-of-the-century photographers, including Edward Weston, Margaret Bourke-White, Steichen, Stieglitz. It's really a kind of who's who of photo history and a really great way to kind of see the dawn of photography as an artistic medium. A New Era looks at contemporary artists using photography as their artistic medium, and that's where you get to see Eric's work and Lori's work, along with several other regional and national artists, international artists who are using photography. In replications, we get to see photography really has fought hard against replications about printing and the way that it's been used, but we're able to see in pop art how replications was used. The reproducibility of art was really important in its artistic empowerment for pop art. So this is what we're doing today, just a quick hour for the virtual lecture series with Eric and Lori. And then next week, it's on a Tuesday, so people can observe Martin Luther King Day on Monday. So Tuesday, January 19th at 12:30, we'll be hearing about manipulation and conflict of analog and digital photography with Zishan Ahmed and Laura Krasnow. So as we begin here, I am going to introduce Eric. So Eric is an American artist originally from the foothills of Appalachian Mountains in Western Pennsylvania. Eric Charlton's work is exploring the desire for meaning and the lack of human understanding from a cosmic scale to the minutiae of the everyday. He embraces an open studio practice that centers around a broad definition of objecthood and the absurd acts of humans trying to make sense of the world. He earned his MFA at Syracuse University and has been the recipient of multiple residencies and has exhibited throughout the country and throughout the world. So Eric, I'm gonna hand you off to screen share and you can have that. And if there's any questions you have for Eric as this begins, please put them in the chat. And please, Eric, if you'll take it away for us.
All right, I'm gonna get the screen share going. And can everyone see that? Does that look right? Okay, cool. Well, first off, I'd like to say thank you to Hannah Harley and all of SAMA Altoona for including me in this exhibition series and also inviting me to come by and chat today. I have to say I was not expecting to be included in a photo exhibition, but when I talked to Hannah, it made a lot more sense to me, her vision of like how my work, and specifically this work, works within the frame of photography. And I really appreciate this opportunity to sort of expand my media that I can claim as part of my artistic practice. So I guess I'd like to start off my talking about the title screen here. this Everything is Fine is artist talk title that I've been using for a few years. I started it at the end of my graduate school studies at Syracuse University, mostly talking to other graduate students who were equally panicked, as one does in graduate school. So this is just sort of a representation of my sense of humor, and then also just like a sense of how my work tries to get across the idea of just like embracing the anxiety and the humor of the human condition, I guess. Essentially the combination of existential dread and overwhelming joy of the insignificance of it all, which really gives us the power to make meaning of our own. I then wanted to go into a few other works that aren't included in this exhibition that I think help frame the work that is actually at SAMA Altoona right now. So first off, I have my NPR laugh track, and I think that I will just let this play. It should pop up. So could everyone hear that okay? Is that the audio came through? Oh, excellent. I figured not. Well, it's just going to make my next slide even better because it's really dependent on audio. So the way this piece works, it's an FM transmitter set up in a gallery, and it is sending audio to multiple old FM radios that are around the gallery. And the audio is NPR talk shows that are dissected, and the laughter is extracted from them. So it's just a laugh track. You can find this work on my website, and you can get a sense of the disembodied laughter. And I wanted to include this as it is. It works in the same vein as the After Christina work, which is in the photo exhibition, using existing media and dissecting and altering it to shift the meaning into like a more contemporary, or in this case, just sort of like a more dystopian feel. This piece I started in the beginning. I started recording and dissecting the laughter in 2016 during the presidential race 4 years ago. And it began with me questioning how, like what the appeal of Trumpism was. So at the very beginning of that. And I feel like that has grown quite a bit, but I still think that this piece resonates with that. Not necessarily like what is Trump doing to attract people, but what is like maybe what they would call left-wing media doing to alienate people. And so I was working in Syracuse stage at the time as a scene builder. And so working manual labor, and NPR was often on in the background in a really bad stereo system where sometimes all I could hear was the laughter. And so I was just like physically like struggling with things while disembodied laughter was happening in the background. And I was like, this maybe is part of the like lack of allure for, interesting, for people with like NPR and liberal medias or liberal scene medias. So moving on from this, the next piece that you won't be able to hear is called Galveston. And it is a remix of the bridge of Glenn Campbell's country song, Galveston. So it is like right at the end point, he says, Galveston, Galveston, I'm so afraid of dying. And so I have that just looped and have made a 3-minute music video for it through an animation. And then it just continues to loop in perpetuity. So this is the work that is actually included in the photo exhibition at SAMA. This is After Christina. It is a digital rendering of the famous Andrew Wyeth painting, Christina's World. So as you can see, there's a callback to the other two works and sort of using existing media and altering it and focusing in on some aspects of it that act as a like to sort of amplify the meaning for me. I personally found this painting in particular to be like worth recreating because it embodies this sort of like darkness and hopelessness of this Christina character laying in a field, reaching for a house that she can't reach. And I just also included the original, so the original on the right and my recreation on the left. So I wanted to take this 40s depiction of this like slight hopelessness that, so this was painted in 1948, just after World War II, sort of like that sort of the darkness that came with that war. And I wanted to create that version, but an updated one that sort of spoke more to the digital present and the online existence and the hopelessness there. And then also I think that it's important for me to like look back at this old media where these ideas are utilized, because it's a reminder that these feelings aren't necessarily brand new, but maybe the new part about it is that we're actually having conversations about it now. And then I've included a few things with this to sort of show how this is made and how it sort of fits into like the overall scope of the photography. So I made this as a digital environment. So this is like a sort of the way like a video game would be made. So this is a 3D character, and this is a field that I made in a virtual environment. So in the next video that doesn't require sound, I've blown it out a little bit so you can see the actual layout of the print that I made. So from a side view, so Christina's all the way over here, and then this is just that hill up to the house and stuff. And so I just wanted to include that as just to sort of give the alternative perspective of how this work looks while I'm working on it, I guess. And then also to sort of take me to the next piece that goes with this, which is Christina's house. And it is a 3D print of the house in the actual 3D model. And it's printed with like a inkjet plaster printer. So it prints the detail of the actual, what the 3D model texture is. And so here's a virtual rotation of it. So you can see from one perspective, the house texture looks like appropriate from the perspective of the painting, but from every other direction, it doesn't really make any sense on the object. And so here is a few other alternative shots from that house of the actual object. And this is in the museum right now as well. And that's all. Just a quick little talk and introduction to my work. Thank you again for having me. And you can see in the bottom corners my website and Instagram, where you can see those videos with full audio, so they will make a little more sense.
Yes, thank you so much. I have linked his website there into the chat, so you can go to that whenever you like, because that was one of the questions there. They wanted to see the videos with sound, so we've sent that in. And when we are in our Q&A time, we'll be able to ask Eric some more questions. But for now, we are going to actually talk to Lori. Hi, Lori. How you doing? Give us a little wave. So Lori Hepner, she is a Pittsburgh-based artist working primarily in performative light painting, fine art photography, and community-centered public art projects. She has spent a considerable amount of time over the last 5 years in the Arctic through artist residencies in Finland, Iceland, Canada, and Norway. Her work has been featured in Time, Wired, and Next Level magazine. And she has been exhibited at the Houston Center for Photography, Carnegie Museum of Art, the Brooklyn Museum, and in photo festivals in the Netherlands, China, and Spain. And her work will be sent to Live on the Moon in the Mini Museum of the Moon ARC in 2021. So let's all join in welcoming Lori. So welcome, Lori.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to listen to us talk on this Monday. Gonna get started with the screen share. Hopefully, let's see, you can see some of my work. And All right. So I have two different bodies of work that are in the exhibition. And so I wanted to start out with the work that I started first. And so as you heard in my bio, I do a lot of work with LEDs and light. And this sort of does stem from my background. I am a photographer. I went to photo school at RIT, and then RISD for grad school in digital media. And in photography, you know, I learned in dark rooms and working, you know, with film. And so I've also always had an interest in digital technology, and that'll pop up a little bit later. But those two interests sort of combined here. And so this body of work is called Status Symbols, with a subtitle of being Twitter Portraits. So this I started in 2009, and the work is not with the text on top of it. So this is what one of the pieces in the gallery looks like. And this was something that I shot using what's called a microcontroller. And it's a little mini computer. And what my interest was at this time was thinking about how digital technology it sort of has this hidden language behind it of binary code, which is that ons and offs, zeros and ones of digital technology. And I've been using that in a prior body of work that looked really different. But in this piece, all of these are portraits of people on Twitter. And so I started this is from 2011, this particular tweet. And I was looking at the sort of top Twitterers at this point. So that meaning the people that had the most followers on Twitter. So it really ranged from people, this is Katy Perry, we had Rihanna, Britney Spears, Barack Obama, and kind of seeing what they were using Twitter for. And so this is a period in Twitter before we had images. It was only 140 characters of text. And so what I did to sort of create the piece was that I would take the text, so that's what you can see here, that at Katy Perry, that's sort of who was doing it and sort of when. So 10th of May via Uber Social as the sort of upload technology. And the tweet was at Rihanna, work. And so that text, the at Rihanna and the hashtag WERQ, I programmed into a microcontroller, like I was saying. And so this is just a little snippet of what some of those background text looks like. And what all of this would do is that little mini computer was told to blink on and off in LEDs with binary code. So what that is there are a few different ways you can kind of look at binary code, but I was using this encoding, it's called ASCII, A-S-C-I-I, it's keyboard text. So you can kind of see here, this is a little chart. So every keyboard press has 8 ones and zeros that represent it. And so what that little computer program was doing was taking each of those letters and turning it into zeros, which are off, and 1, which is on. And through something like this, which is this little microcontroller, this is called an Arduino. And the actual device that I use was something that I built with some help from friends at a place called Hack Pittsburgh at the time. And this is literally a record player with 8 little LEDs, which are kind of like Christmas light sized lights. And when I turned it on, they would blink really quickly and the record player would spin. So as that was happening, I had a camera set up with film in it. And all of these are long exposure. So this is a photo on film of those lights spinning for 5 to 10 seconds. And I would have no idea what this is gonna look like, because when I say blink, I mean like microseconds blink. So I had no clue what the images were gonna be of each of these particular things until after I saw it. But with these, I did sort of program in certain things. So like if you had a hashtag, that was gonna show up red. So in the Rihanna work, the WERQ part of that is what comes up red. And then the other ones, the at symbols were yellow, quotes were purple, and then regular words were just randomized when a new word popped up. So every word could be a different color. And through this, when I was finished, we ended up getting things that looked like this. So this is another piece. And I believe this is one that's in the museum. And this was a Britney Spears tweet. And also sort of in old school Twitter, if you at somebody, they only got it themselves. So this was, also Britney Spears telling Nicki Minaj to work it. So I was really interested in sort of what people were using and how they were talking to each other, but I was only looking at their most recent tweets when I was doing this. So I didn't really like go back and try to find what words they were using. It just kind of things that I happened upon, things that I also thought were funny. So this is one of my favorites from the series, and favorites those visually. I like how kind of the reds and the blues sort of mixed in there, but also because of what this is. And it does go with sort of another one. So this is a Lady Gaga tweet. And I was like, what the heck is, I have no idea what any of that is. Her tweet after that created this piece. And the text from that was Lady Gaga admitting that she butt tweeted by sitting on her phone. So I thought that was hilarious because at the time, this is still like the early, not everybody had smartphones. Everybody still had sometimes phones with buttons and Blackberries. So you think about this period in time, like I was still getting butt dialed from my dad when he would put his phone in his pocket. So sometimes, I thought that was really funny. And then, a couple days later, this was deleted. It was no longer in the Twitter feed. So, I was looking at that and sort of thinking that that's funny, but also just really kind of interested in what the photograph ended up being because these were all film. So this is another one from this that is a Kim Kardashian tweet. I also like this because it is kind of photography related. So I have the cutest pics. I will email you all of them, thinking that that's funny. So this idea of, the reason why I was interested in making this type of work was I was interested in how, Twitter could be these like momentary portraits of somebody and how they were trying to express themselves, in social media in this digital sphere. So this idea of these kind of momentary portraits of a person, and how could you have that tweet that was only text and couldn't have pictures and couldn't have, links embedded, that, I was sort of creating these avatars. And so to go back to a really long period of time, so it's kind of drawing with light is what I was doing. To go back to something that I found when I was in graduate school and going through some of my things, is that this is a drawing that I did in kindergarten in Pittsburgh Public Schools for Pittsburgh, that was done in computer art class. And it was done in a program called Logo. And there was this thing called the turtle, and you basically could tell it to draw a line out of its butt by putting in computer code. And so, if I wanted to make a square, this is what it looked like. So I was actually learning to draw using computer programs in 1985, 1986, forget what exact year that was. But you can sort of see, like, this is where my artistic background really started. So it wasn't surprising when I started to make work based on digital technology and code and sort of being able to draw with code. The series, before I got to looking at sort of the most famous Twitterers, the people with the most followers, I did start it with an interactive project with the Brooklyn Museum. And it was through this At First Fans account. And so what this was, they would give an artist this Twitter feed for a month to do a project. And so I would ask people questions and sort of ask them to tweet me back their portraits. And then I would go and try to create those using, those computer programs and my film photography. So this is one of the pieces that came out of that. And so this is actually from a friend of mine who tweeted me in genetic code, who's a biologist. So this is the kind of GCUAC is actually some, thinking about DNA technology. So this is what some of them look like when I was first starting. And then I was also, because I was interested in the 0 and 1, creating diptychs out of this. So this is from that First Fans project. This is the first tweet somebody tweeted me back. And it's just R. I don't know if they're trying to be funny, like, hey, pirate, or they accidentally butt tweeted that, but I thought it was really funny. But I was also really interested in what it looked like when that computer program was drawing this. So seeing how we have this kind of line, that's just that R that repeats. And then this little triangle of yellow is the at Ranjit. And this right now, sort of pulling this up, so if you end up at the Carnegie Museum, this actually just went up in the photography section of the SCAFE galleries at the museum. I haven't actually been able to see it yet because the museum closed with a lot of the rest of Pennsylvania, but I had a surprise letter saying, hey, we have your work that's in the permanent collection. We're actually going to put it on view. So if you're in the museum for the next 6 months, go take a look if you want to see this in real life. But that's kind of where this Twitter portrait idea started from, is a lot of me working with people interactively, and also kind of then just looking at the state of the digital world. And I am going to mention, sort of in my bio, we're talking about the moon arc that's going to live on the moon. So I actually made a portrait of the founders of this moon art group, which this is an arts group out of CMU that has collaborated with, I think it's over 100 artists in this mini museum that's just a few inches tall that is actually going to go on a moon lander and be taken to the moon. And so I made a Twitter portrait of the kind of GPS location, which is the tweet of the founders of this project, where their studio is located. And so I made one of the Twitter portraits, and it has been etched in a ruby disc that's going to be in the moon arc that goes to the moon, supposedly in 2021. But they've been planning this since, was originally supposed to launch in 2017, so it's been pushed back many times, but this is kind of a cool project. There's also a really awesome website of all the different art that's on that. It's just moonarc.org, I think. But kind of fast forwarding, I'm going to switch over to the other body of work that I do have in the exhibition right now. And so it looks a little bit different. So we're moving away. I still work with abstraction quite a bit in my work. But this is a project where the body of work is called Crowdsource Landscapes. And I started this work when I was able to go on sabbatical from teaching. I teach at Penn State at the Greater Allegheny campus. And I was luckily able to go on some residencies in Finland. So I spent, was it 5.5 months in Finland in different parts of the country, photographing the natural landscape, and then creating some of these abstracted landscapes that were, the titles are inspired by people that I was talking to that live there. And I was asking them questions about, like, well, how do you feel like your landscapes are going to be changing due to climate change, and sort of also the memory of landscapes? How is your future memory going to be changing because of how landscapes are changing? And so this is one of those. This is another. The title of this is Warm Breezes Near the Second Closest Lake. And that was sort of what somebody was tweeting to me at that point. But what this is also using LEDs. I'm creating work using a 6-foot-tall LED light stick that I'm able to put my own photography of the landscape onto, and then using long exposures and me physically dancing in front of my camera in the studio, I'm able to sort of create this work. This is another piece of this. And this one, you can maybe see there is a horizon line. And this is you can sort of see there's some abstracted branches. But the reason why we don't see exactly what's going on is because the 6-foot-tall stick has 256, not 20, 212 LEDs in it. So it's like really low resolution. But I really loved what that did visually as it kind of was creating these abstractions. Another piece in this series, the title of this is A Chopped Mountaintop Down the Road. And it's a little bit also abstract. And to give you a better sense of what I mean by how I make these, I do have a little video that I'm going to hit play on. So this is going to show you sort of how this happens. And I believe I turned the audio off on purpose. But this is the light stick that I kind of am able to use. And so if I would walk in a straight line, as this is doing, you'll see the landscape photo a little bit more normally. But if I move this as I'm taking it, I end up getting a really abstracted landscape. So with that, so that's a little chunk of a documentary that WQED did that I got featured in called Visible, and they have their whole thing on the website if you're interested in watching that. So I have since then sort of created a real-time projection system where I can dance with my lights and see it happen in real time rather than just waiting for the film to get processed, which is what I had to do at the original part of working with LEDs. But the body of work, I really loved just the variability. And so as I was doing this, I was sort of creating work and going out in the landscape and photographing and kind of coming back to the studio and making more work. This piece is called Time Lapse. This one is a beautiful landscape bordering my home. And so these were actually exhibited as photographs. They're printed out on photo paper that are rear mounted to plexi. So if you see them in the gallery, they're kind of have a really glossy surface to them, which I really, really do like. But it is a traditional photograph. It's on photographic paper. And so I've always liked mixing technology with kind of old school analog technology. So in a lot of my work, there is usually an analog element and a digital element somewhere. And those mix of those two usually end up in my work in some way, as well as having performance happen in some way, whether that's me performing in front of a camera, whether I have somebody in a public art project where the community is collaborating and doing a performance to help create the work. In the case of the Twitter portraits, it's really the light and the movement that's creating the performance that we're able to watch. But in all of these, there are some that are more abstracted than others, but some where you can start to see some of the imagery in it. So the last one I'm going to show before I kind of hand this back over to Hannah, this one you can sort of see there are some birch trees. There's a ton of birch forests in Finland and some leaves that were happening in fall. And the title of this is It's Better When It Snows and Just Gets It Over With in November, which I always thought was a little humorous as what people were talking to me. So I'm gonna kind of end my screen share. If I can get back to Zoom. There we go.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Lori, for sharing, and thank you, Eric. Those were both great presentations. Everyone, if you could put your questions into the chat, or if you want to unmute and ask a question, please go ahead and do so. We're gonna get started on some of the discussion between Eric and Lori, so feel free to think of your questions and add those into the chat, and I'll make sure they get to see those. So you both use photography and technology in your art making practice. How do you think technology, especially over the last 10 years, has influenced your artistic practice? You both kind of touched on that a little bit, but I'd love to hear how you think it is now, but also where you think it's going.
I guess I can start a little bit with that. In terms of, I'm inspired by technology to help, create new ideas for projects. And so one of the things I think is really coming out there is augmented reality and sort of using things, maybe not VR where we all have headsets on, but sort of this idea of augmented reality being like you could point your phone at something and more information will come out than you can see with your normal eyes. And so my sort of grander scheme project, I'm hopefully going on a sabbatical either next year or the year after that, which lets me go on artist residencies out of the area during sort of the academic year. I'm hoping to do light painting on location in landscapes while making that augmented reality. So somebody could show up at the place after I'm there and then sort of use their phone and then see sort of 360 degree of light painting that shows up in the landscape where I'm doing the performance. So I'm hoping to do some of that. Hopefully in the Arctic, I've sort of really fell in love with the landscapes and sort of the very big differences from there. But I'm also, do this locally in Pennsylvania as well. But I think augmented reality is gonna hit bigger, maybe virtual reality. I don't know what Eric thinks.
There we go. Trying to unmute myself. Yeah, I think as it's played a role for me in the past, it's always sort of been, there were moments whenever I didn't really have a studio, but I had a computer. So there, wasn't like a lot of my work is physical sculptures, not what I showed today, but it's always been important for me to sort of have that outlet of like, no matter my like real world spatial confines, I always have like the virtual space where I can play. And so that for me, technology wise, has always been really important. I'm definitely interested in that, both AR and like the combination between like the tactile and the virtual. So right now I'm sort of, I'm working towards more sort of video game styles of work, where like making controllers and like where you would control characters like the singer from the Galveston video, and things like that, just sort of making experiences that are a little bit more virtual, hopefully making those for online platforms so they're just like readily accessible. And then as far as like future things that I don't really know much about, but am very excited about, I think that AI has a lot of possibilities. And like, I think that it will be interesting to see what artists can do once they have more like connection to and are able to utilize like the artificial intelligences that are being worked on right now. But as I said, I don't know much about those. I just like see them and can see infinite possibilities there.
Yeah, I kind of piggyback off of that for how you see both of you are working also with translating what's happening sometimes online or sometimes in historic paintings into also kind of imagery that you can view on a computer, especially when we consider about how exhibitions and art is looked at a lot now. Now we have physical artwork here. How are you considering your artwork within the ideas that we're meeting online, we're doing all of this online, and we have work here, but how is that kind of impacting your artistic practice?
Yeah, so I would say like it's definitely got me thinking a lot more about alternative platforms, I suppose, and like hosting on websites and things. But in like the completely opposite way, like it's really given me an appreciation for like actually seeing an artwork in real life. So that's like part of, even though the After Christina is made digitally, I think it really like thrives when it's printed to scale, like to the same scale as the original painting, and is in a place like Sama. Like I think like that's really like the apex of like how that work lives.
Yeah, I like having work in a physical space when it's possible and not have it only be virtual. But COVID has sort of changed up a lot of how we make work and how we share work these days. I've been doing I sort of have always worked in photography, but sort of switching more to some also new media-based things and doing real-time performance work, and then working with others in community. It's been completely shut down because of COVID. It can't happen in real life. So this idea of like being able to be in both like only a digital realm, but then also like live in places, like live in people's houses or live in a museum or see something in real life is something that I really enjoy and miss. But I do also like having things be only sort of in that digital realm. And one of the things I sort of saw, one of the questions that just came in on the chat, people were asking about how work is collaborative. Since I'm talking about that, I figured I'd touch on it.
Yeah.
I have done work sort of using LEDs and being able to work with different communities and sort of use that to create portraits of people that then ends up in another work. And I just wanted to share an image really quick because I think it would make sense.
And that question is, it's from Ariana. It says, I'd love for you to discuss the collaborative aspect of your work and how it's potentially affected the methods you've used to create your pieces and portraits of others. So I think that's also a great question too, to consider, like, especially with the one that was deleted, that legacy imprint online that is maybe something you try to take back afterwards, but you kind of can't. And now you've made artwork and now it hangs in a museum, talking about that kind of thing. So I think that's a really interesting way to consider a portrait.
Yeah, I like the idea of letting people sort of create their own portraits through how they want themselves to be seen, either on social media, also in real life, using, if you're working in a workshop with somebody, like how do you get them to help, be interested and engaged and try to create a portrait of them? Where in my work, usually the portraits aren't standard portraits. There's some level of abstraction. I've done work in projects. There's a project called Color Beach View, where people of multi-generations were coming together, and I was sort of giving light sticks and music, and people were dancing and kind of creating silhouette portraits of each other using the LED lights. And, I really like that kind of aspect of letting people have some control in the work themselves. So whether it's, with the Brooklyn Museum, I was asking people to tweet back to me and then kind of sharing their portrait. But neither of us would know what the portrait was really going to look like until after it was created. And so part of that, I think, is really interesting and what interests and engages me in the work. But I also kind of like to sort of hand off some of my systems to other people, my systems of making work, and say, hey, how would you make some work using this? And I'm usually surprised, because the way that I see the world is usually really different than the way, other people or lots of other people see the world. So it's really often mind-blowing to me when somebody does something, like a workshop, then like, oh, wow, that wasn't how I was thinking about how that technology could be used, but that's really awesome and creative how you went about that.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you, Lori. Are you sharing a photograph with us now?
I can do that a little bit later if it pops up.
There's a question for Eric from Donna. How do you determine what the back of the house looked like in After Christina?
So it's a really good question. It's all from the perspective of the original painting. So in that program, I set up just that, like the original painting over the camera. So like I would turn down the opacity and like look through it at the actual like model. And so for the texture of the house, I just took that painting and took like where the house fell in it, and then painted that texture onto the object from that perspective, if that makes sense. If you don't know the technology, it might not make all that much sense, but if you look at it, like if you look at the actual house, you can see like how the way that it's stretched, it's all from like that one perspective out to the house back there.
In the shadows, not in the actual structure of the house though.
What do you mean the shadows? Like
the way the light is painted on it is included in there. So like the actual thing is like a house, and then the light is from the perspective. Yeah,
so that's the light is from like that's the way the house is painted in the painting. Like that light is
yeah. It's really cool to see it, because that is a 3D object in the gallery. So it's like this size roughly, and so you get to really get up close to it. We have a great spotlight on it, and it's really beautiful to see in person. If we have any other questions, please put those in the chat. If anyone would like to speak now to ask their questions, now is a great time. Any other questions? All right, I have one. So one of our exhibition pieces in this is Pictorialism and the Pictorialists. And they worked really hard to get photography to be considered a fine art medium. Both of you are dealing with with art making in a kind of way that's a little different than traditional painting, sculpture methods. Do you think you have to defend that medium? Do you think it's reached that level? Or are you like not interested in trying to figure out that label? If you're like, I'm good, I don't want to try to debate if photography or digital renderings or Twitter portraits are art, they are, and I say they are, and there we go. So what is your kind of reaction to those questions that they've been kind of asking for over 150 years now?
I'll say that this is something that's come up since I was in school. I know when I was in RIT, I did a lot of video work, and this is sort of the early 2000s, put a time period on it. And my mentor, my faculty member, her artwork was kicked out of the faculty show because she made a video, and photographers did not find that photography enough. And so they made her take her work down. And so that's kind of stuck with me throughout my career, and sort of seeing how the discipline of photography sometimes views work that's a little bit outside of the norm as like it doesn't count. And I have had that happen to me as an artist when I strictly stay within the confines of the photography realm of the world, or the fine art photography realm. But I feel like it's getting better. But at the same time, my work is very much doesn't fit within a nice, easy category within fine art photography right now. So I guess I have a love-hate relationship with that idea. But I like being somewhat on the outside, but it would be a lot easier in terms of finding collectors or having, you know, opportunities to fit inside the box a little bit. But I think what I make is art. It's just, sometimes it's easier to call it art than to call it photography.
Yeah, interesting. Your work to me includes elements of photography so clearly, for it not to be considered as, I think, a little interesting, and you know, the blurring of the lines of what even is photography, a photograph, and really at the end of the day, that I think is an interesting way to kind of start to look at these light-based mediums. So Eric, what do you think? I know you said you didn't think to be in a photography exhibition, but
yeah, so I guess I've always skewed towards like sculpture for this reason, because like sculpture throughout my like experience has always been very open, and I generally work in a pretty like fractured studio practice where like I have an idea and I do whatever I need to do to make it happen, and a lot of times it ends up being like physical objects, but I've moved a lot more digital recently, and so I'm actually struggling in this a little bit more. You know, it's like job application season and stuff, and I'm applying for like sculpture jobs, and a lot more of my recent portfolio is more digital, and I'm like at what, like, you know, at what level am I like showing the sorts of things they're looking for, in like, and I think sculpture can at sometimes be closed off in a lot of other ways where they're like very interested in only physical objects. So yeah, I think what initially attracted me to it is maybe now driving me away from it in a weird way. But yeah, I generally think as a whole, these things are going to be like accepted broadly as art. I'm a lot more interested in like that point where someone doesn't like it, declares it's not art, but then like I'm interested in the conversation of like, well, like maybe it's not just not art, maybe you just don't like it, and that's okay, but like let's figure out why, or like let's have that conversation, because I'm a lot more interested in that sort of like level of like, you know, let's figure out why your tastes are that way and why this isn't art for you. But
yeah, that's a great point as well, of figuring out even what is art to you as an individual, but also what is art to the viewer, to the institutions, to, you know, all sorts of different things that are deciding what the conversation is. So without any other questions, I'm just gonna kind of round out our talk here with these slides. Thank you so much, Eric and Lori. It's been a real treat to hear about your artistic practice. You can see their work. Please consider donating to the museum. I've put a link in the chat if you're able to. That's sama-art.org/donate. And this exhibition is on view right now in downtown Altoona. Thank you for our exhibition sponsors, to the Strubers and Rocket Fuel Studios. And next week we will be starting on Tuesday, January 19th. That's going to be Tuesday, not Monday. And if you do have any questions, please let us know. Email us at the museum. We'll be hearing from Zishan Ahmed and Laura Krasnow, and you can actually see their work in person this week at the museum. So thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Lori. We have had a really wonderful time, and we really appreciate you joining us and for sharing your work with all of us here in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So enjoy the rest of your day, everyone, and have a great start to your week.
thank you.